So here is a wing panel. There are the holes cut out. That's one of the top ones. And here's the skeleton. Again, I didn't show these, but just to give you an idea of how it goes together. It's very simple, very self-explanatory. Here's a little strip that's going to be part that's going to cover where the ailerons go, kind of as an edge piece. It ends up ultimately looking like that. When it's all together, it'll hold that piece, those pieces on edge. It'll look fine. So first thing to do, I've curved the wings a little bit, but you can see you position this, and the place to position it is right up against the edge of where the aileron openings are. I found that out after doing 3 of these panels. That will sort of get it all in place. Now in my position, I actually found out that I was a little bit too long, so I had to cut off those spars a little bit on the base just to get them right. But here they are, and they look good. So once those are together and where they should be, and they got under camber, remember, you just glue them up. And I'm just using my plain old, regular old turbo tacky glue, gluing up all these surfaces that are going to come in contact. And I put this thing down on the bottom wing panel first. That just gives me a nice stable place for it to go. And then I can work on bringing the panel over the top, the skin over the top. So you can see again what I try to do here is position it so that the very edge is on that corner where the aileron is going to go, and then I make sure it goes all the way along the aileron, and then the wingtip is there, and I kind of push those down to get it started. Then I go to the end and to the wing root part and sort of push that down. And once I get it sort of started, that's the beauty of this tacky glue, why I like it. You know, that gets it moving, that gets it started. And then I pick it up and I use my fingers to individually go through here and make sure like I got under camber touching on the lower ribs, because you don't want it flat. It is actually under cambered. And if you just go around here and sort of tap and touch all the way around and get off excess glue, and you just do this all the way around where the glue is touching, that goes a long way to making sure everything is nice and in contact, and you're going to have a nice glue joint there when you're all done. So that's basically what you end up doing. Little places like here, I find I did a little bit of block sanding there to get rid of that. I'm using 1/16 balsa, which is incrementally too big, too thick. And so I think what happens is over time, my edges are a little bit wide. So I've had to sand them back a bit, but that's a small price to pay, and it's not hard to do. Now I'm making my little riblets, and I took someone's suggestion here in this case for these ones that are on the top wing. What I end up doing is I put them against a rib that's already there, the front part, and I trace it out with the knife. So I cut something that's very close to, if not identical to, you can trim it a little bit and sand it down a little bit, to that wing rib, that front component from the spar forward, and then just cut this out. In this case, this is 1/32 sheet. I think it looks better underneath in the open window to see the 1/32 sheet rib. Cut this out, and I sand it a little bit. I make sure it looks about right, and I test fit it and all this. You can see I get the bottom part to be rounded a little. And there's 4 of them that have to go in. But what they're going to do is, just to show you, they will fit. And I'll glue them right up against the spar. And that was a really good suggestion somebody made in one of my previous videos, instead of gluing them to the paper first. Here I am locating where the ribs have to go. So I took the paper and I held it up against the light, and I put marks where the little pieces are located. And then I just am drawing a line to show where they're going to go. Now notice this time I did not color the inside of the wings. It's partially because once these things are closed, it's very dark in there, and I want to be able to see the ribs, and I want to be able to see the little cable. So I'm living it off. We'll see how it goes. So now, any way you can do it, but this is how I've been doing it with this cheap little leather punch, making my holes. I make a hole in each of the ribs, just like I showed before, and works surprisingly well. I thought it would crush, but it doesn't. It crushes a little bit. You know, probably could be sharper if there was probably a more quality tool, but it still works. And you basically make those all the way around on all of them. And then I start again using this funny kind of weird yellow-brown color. You got to test and just see what looks good on your wood in my case. Put that around. One thing I did forget to do was color the spar on this one, but that's okay. I just didn't realize it until I had covered it all up. But I put that color on first, and then I hit it with bright orange, and that gives me sort of a suggestion of a neater color that's like varnished wood. It isn't perfect, but when you look through the little windows, it does look pretty convincing. It's kind of cool based on the other ones that I've done so far. So basically do that on all of the little riblets. And then the center hole, I color with a Sharpie, just sticking it into that hole, and that automatically gives you a nice round black edge outline everywhere. And that works really well. So do that to all of them. And then I add a little glue to the edge there, and I can see my lines, and I go ahead and put these on. Just make sure they're lined up, because the idea is they're supposed to line up on the rib tapes. And if I did my lines correctly, they should. So that's gluing to the spar. Like I said, one of the comments told me to try that. You know, why not do that? Much better idea. Here's my little cable. I've cut it to about the right size. I swarm it through a couple of those holes, and then I'll put a little glue on the tip, a little super glue onto the tip of the elastic, and then I will just fish it in and glue it to the inside of that rib, so that I have a nice attachment point, a place for it to go. I don't know in reality, are you going to see these that much? Is it really going to matter? But it's nice to know they're there, and I figure sometimes it's fun to peek in there and you see that cable, and it's fake, of course, but it gives you an idea there's something in there. A little bit of zip kicker to move it along, and then weave it through the other holes on the other sides, on the other ribs. Just poke it right through those holes, bring it through, see where it's going to sit, and then just put a little bit of glue down there somewhere where you're going to stretch it. I just did that by eye. You could use a little pencil to mark it off, but you know, once you've done this a gazillion times, you kind of get the feel of it. And then just put this guy down just like we're doing our rigging. A little bit of zip kicker on the end, and then you just drop it into the puddle, and that should solidify instantaneously. And now you've got a piece of cable going through. Again, the idea is it looks pretty cool when it's done. You can see in there if you look carefully, and that's kind of the detail side of it. That's fun to do. Now, here I've cut out a couple pieces of clear rectangles that are going to go in there, and I'm trying this new way. I'm adding super glue. Before I used contact cement, but I wanted to use super glue because I didn't want to wait for the contact cement. So I'm putting super glue, thick super glue around the edge in a thin layer, and then here I'm just making sure it's real thin because you don't want it to scrooge out onto the clear plastic. And you don't want so much of it that it's going to make the paper hard and therefore difficult to bend and roll. You want a nice curve. So these pieces are already cut. They're long and a little wider so that they should fit and give me a little overlap. So I go ahead and I just put that down and tap it. Make sure it's all the way around. The edges is all contacting the glue. I haven't had this happen in 3 out of the 4 panels. Only a little zip kicker to glue it dry. Those have always stayed perfectly. But of course, the one that I'm filming now, one of those panels, clear panels, falls out. And I actually ended up adding a panel on the outside on the wing, and it ended up okay. It looks fine. But anyway, this is how it's worked so far. It'd be nice if it's a glue that was a little bit more pliable, but it seems to work. Now, I initially am starting to bend this over. I'm lining up the leading edge of those ribs, and I take my big ruler so I can fold the paper all the way over. And you do it in increments. You don't just fold it over, bam. You kind of entice the paper over. I find that that's a better idea. I actually learned that on Flight Test, a site where they make all kinds of RC things out of the foam board. And so when they're bending over this foam board, you don't go flam right down. You sort of bend it slow and careful. And that works for these too. So you can see the little white edge, but I'm trying to line it up and making sure that it's going to actually fold over. And you can see the windows looking pretty good. So that's cool. So once you test fit that and roll over a couple times, you then take your glue and commit to gluing all those edges. And you got to make sure they're nice and glued, because including the trailing edge on the paper back there, just to make sure you're going to have a nice contact. But also I put on too much at once. then I fold it back over, carefully holding the wings down there. And somewhere in here, I don't know where, but I said I lost one of my clear panels. But that's neither here nor there, it turned out. Making sure now, it's just a matter of making sure your edges are lining up as best you can. If they're not perfect, you can always paint and go back and do things. I guarantee you, once you put the whole airplane together and all the struts and everything, it's not going to be off so much that it's damaging to the airplane. So don't obsess too much. But yeah, ideally you want to get it as clean as possible. And you can see here I do a pretty good job, but it might need a little sanding or some recoloring. And that's not the end of the world. It's supposed to be a fun hobby. It's not supposed to be open heart surgery, life and death. So I'm making sure pieces are sticking, and again, this glue is nice because it tacks quick. Here's an example where I'm going to need to sand that down a little bit. And those ribs, by the way, on the base, they're canted, so they actually are angled to get the right dihedral when it comes time. And so when that problem comes, we'll go through it. Here you can see my one wing. Oh wait, maybe this isn't it. Somewhere I noticed that it's missing. Then you put on this little edge piece, which you probably could have done it before, but I just decided to do these at the end. And you just add glue, as you'd imagine, all the way around. Again, a little bit more, and then I kind of tap it back all the way along the edge, and then you're going to just put that piece of paper on. It's easy to register it because it's got edges that are bent, so it fits really nice. And all 4 of the, or 8 of these, I guess, 8 of them, have worked. Oh, 4. There's only 4 wing panels, dummy. All 4 of these have fit really well. So I start by lining it up where that line is at the aileron hinge line, and then just kind of center that. I'm going to paint around the edges there. That won't be a problem. And then you just roll this thing in and make sure it goes straight all along where the aileron's going to go. It's going to be hidden mostly by the aileron, but especially if you put the ailerons and have them canted one way or the other, they will show. So you just make sure those are in there, and then in the corner I take a little, I think I take a tweezers, something flat and square, there you go, to just sort of make sure I got a nice right angle in there. And you can see that there's a little bit of white all along there, right where my finger is, but I can go back and color that in. The wingtip has a couple little darts and folds that have to be cut, and then they're cut before you put it on, of course. And then you put that in and kind of hold it together and curl it with your fingers and sort of force it into shape. I pre-rolled them a little bit so that they're kind of curved. And again, anything that's open down there, I can paint that and fix that. Now here I'm making sure my little holes line up, which they do. I open them where the struts are going to go, and there's the wing. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks awesome, actually. And here they are, all, not together, just sitting there, but you can see how they're all going to go. The thing is very large. Really have no idea where I'm going to put this. This will definitely be a something has to hang from the ceiling, or something I have to take to work and hang from the ceiling, because I have no idea where I'm going to put this in my little tiny house. My wife will kick me out. Looking good, though.